Hi, I'm Professor Martin Bunch, and I'm a member of the C4 teaching team. And it's my pleasure this week to welcome you to week 10 of the C4 class. Just to give you a brief overview of what's going to happen, we're going to go over the agenda for this class, and then we're going to talk a little bit just in this introductory video about stakeholders, participants, and ethics, and the Human Participants Review Committee. And that will also link to your 1% for this week. So here's what we're going to do tonight. And we're going to start off with a well-being check-in. I don't know if you can tell, but some of you may, like me, be working out of your basement. And it's been a pretty difficult time for some people working in the COVID environment. And we just wanted to check in with you and see how people were doing. And we have some resources that people can access if you feel like you might make use of that. We're going to then move into a discussion returning to the issue of stakeholders in a pod environment. And then we're going to ask you to orient yourself and your team breakout rooms to the upcoming session after the break, which will be the methods and techniques that we're going to present to you on how to engage with your stakeholders and your participants. And so before the break, you'll briefly go into your rooms and orient yourselves. By that I mean discuss who is going to go to which of these little workshop sessions, and then take your break. And at 7:15, come back. And when you come back, go straight into the rooms, the links that we'll give you for each of these breakout rooms. And there's going to be 5 of them. There's going to be one on interview methods, one on survey methods, one on focus groups, one on workshops, and one on prototyping, which is considered market research. After that, you'll have a good solid 45 minutes to get back into your teams, and just as you did last week, talk about what those workshops will help you do, how they inform your project or not, and use that to inform the piece of work that you're going to be submitting for your 1% this week. Now, just briefly, I'm going to flip over to the issue of research involving human participants, because many of the groups are at this particular stage. And I wanted to point out some basic information, and we can talk more about this if you wanted during the stakeholder bit, or when the team members visit your breakout rooms at the end of the class when you're discussing your techniques for engaging participants. But some things that are important to know are that York University has a policy on research involving human participants. A few things I wanted to point out is that research is defined as an undertaking intended to extend knowledge through a disciplined or systematic investigation, and it includes pilot or preliminary research. That human participants are people who provide data or information to the researcher, and they're doing so not typically in their professional capacity, or that work information is not in the public domain. And that a researcher is considered any member who conducts or advances research in that capacity as a researcher, and or who accesses university students or staff as human research participants, and that includes you as students doing research. Another thing that I wanted to point out from that Senate policy is that we have, as part of this policy, stated the principle that researchers should strive for ethical conduct, right? The university itself affirms that researchers must respect safety, welfare, dignity of human participants in their research and treat those participants equally, fairly, and not as a means to an end. So the flip side of that is that we also value and protect academic freedom, and the ethics review process shouldn't unfairly censor researchers in actually doing their research. But that we need a process in order to make sure that human participants are respected in research. So our human participants policy and our process is designed to protect the rights and well-being of research participants. So you're going to be doing research that will require you to engage with some stakeholders. For the most part, uh, your projects will do this. Some may not, and we'll pass those by the Human Participants Committee for this course in order to determine whether or not you need a review. But in general, all research involving human participants is considered to be research and subject to review, and that you must have a protocol that describes how you will interact with your participants, your stakeholders. You must have a protocol reviewed and approved by the Research Ethics Committee, and you must obtain informed consent from all your research participants for participating in your research. And note that there are some special conditions for minor age participants, those under the age of 16, and for some other research activities, for example, research involving Indigenous peoples. One thing that you will encounter is when you go through the process is for you to decide whether or not your research is to be considered to be minimal risk or not minimal risk. I think yours will probably all be minimal risk, and what that means is that the risk to your participants is no different than what they would encounter in their everyday life. There are resources available to you when you're considering ethics and in human participation in research, and when you're going through the process to apply for your clearance in human participants in your own projects. An important part of that is our Human Research Participants Committee itself, and they will be the ones that are reviewing your human participants package. And they're making themselves available tomorrow, Tuesday the 24th at 4 p.m., 4 to 5 p.m. for a kind of an information session, a Q&A, maybe a little workshop. And you should have at least one member of your team, of your group, attend this session tomorrow. Even if you think that you don't really need to, you should have somebody attending it so that you know if in fact if you're wrong. Your eClass website also has some resources for you. So Celia has prepared some resources for you on that site. I've got a screenshot of it here. There are some resources if you scroll down on the page that I'm showing right now that you'll be able to click on and bring you to some information about what and how to with respect to human participants. I've got a little arrow here that's pointing out where the tab is for accessing the actual form, because some of the links that you have in there have links in them that have expired, but you can access your research ethics form there. Now, your 1% for this week will be based on the work that you do in your reflection after having participated in the earlier sessions of this class, talking about stakeholders and then looking at techniques and modes of engagement with those stakeholders and with research participants. So you're going to need to do something similar to last week, but with a different topic. So your reflection this time will be based on the information that you learn primarily in the techniques section, and you're going to be writing up a short reflection piece as a team, and then submitting that reflection piece to your pod leaders, and the pod leaders will then forward those to the research participants committee, and that committee will take a look at them and flag them if they think there's any concerns there before you develop your full proposal, or if they don't think that this research that you're talking about really needs to go through the human participants research process, then they'll let you know as well, so you can avoid that process if in fact your research doesn't require it. What you should include in that one paragraph description when you're talking about your stakeholders and participants are who they are, and if there are relevant characteristics of that population or those people. For example, if you're talking to to departmental managers in a government department and they're only talking about what is in fact something that pertains to their job, not their opinion of things, that would be relevant because you may not have to go through a human participants review for that particular person if they're acting in their professional capacity. But if they are giving you their own personal reflection, then you will. Also, if they're children or Indigenous persons, that kind of thing, there are other considerations that the Human Participants Committee will need to know about. You need to identify how, any techniques or methods you're going to be employing, and what you will do with that information or data that you generate by engaging them in, say, a survey or an interview or a workshop or those kinds of things. Right, and that's a very short thing. It should be quick. You can do it in your team session tonight. Send them to your pod leaders, and the pod leaders will collect those and forward them on to the committee. That's all. I hope you enjoy the class, and we'll see you on Zoom.